Okay, class, let's continue on with lecture one. Now, I've skipped over some stuff, but you can go over it on your own time. Just what led up to the American Revolution, America winning the Revolutionary War against Britain, and now creating its own type of government. There's a lot of detail there, but for purpose of this class, it's not pertinent that you know all those details. What I'm more concerned about is what it led to. And that's what we're starting right now. And that is with the Articles of Confederation. Now, the Articles of Confederation were created by the colonies after they won the Revolutionary War to attempt to create their own type of government. Now, another way to think of it is perhaps the law of the land before the Constitution. It's like the Constitution before they got the Constitution right, if you will. Okay. It was excuse me, it was passed in 1777 by the Second Continental Congress. And today it's mostly remembered as being a document that didn't really work out, and we'll get to the reasons why, and was really fraught with problems. Now, the biggest problem facing the Articles of Confederation was it left all power and most decision-making power in the hands of the states rather than the federal government. It created a system where states had all the power and the federal government had next to no power. Other problems, it created a government with no chief executive, so no really strong president, no strong federal court system. You only needed 9 out of 13 states to pass any law. Also, there was no way to enforce taxes, no way for federal government to involve itself in foreign affairs, to grow our country. There was trade wars between states. It was just really a document that wasn't working, again, because it did not create a very powerful federal government. So we're going to talk now about Shays' Rebellion, which started in 1786, which I think is a perfect example of the problems with the Articles of Confederation. Daniel Shay was a farmer who, like many other farmers during the beginning of the Revolutionary War, put down his his farming tools and picked up a musket and went to fight for his newly forming country, the United States. After the Revolutionary War ended, he returned to Massachusetts, rural Massachusetts, where he was from, only to find that his farm was being foreclosed on, and this was happening to many farmers during the Revolutionary War. And they said, this isn't fair. We're not able to pay our debt. How farming works even today for many people is you borrow money, you use that money to buy seeds, labor, machinery, whatever it is, you plant the crops, you yield the harvest, you sell those crops, you pay back your loan, you keep the profit. Well, all these men left to fight in the Revolutionary War, there was no one to plant those crops, to harvest the crops, and they couldn't pay their loan back. So they were getting foreclosed on by the banks. So these kind of group of farmers got together and started wreaking havoc in Massachusetts. The state of Massachusetts decided to try to solve the problem. They couldn't. They were too unruly. There were too many of them. They appealed to the federal government for help, and the federal government couldn't do anything about it. Because remember, under the Articles of Confederation, the federal government had almost no power. They had no money. They had no troops or federal police to command. And they essentially couldn't do anything to stop a bunch of farmers. And of course, this is very embarrassing, really a national embarrassment that I think exposed many of the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. Now, for purposes of testing and such, I'm not going to ask you, what are the exact details and dates of Shays' Rebellion. What I would like you to know about Shays' Rebellion, however, is it did showcase that the Articles of Confederation had created a problematic system in which the federal government was so weak it couldn't even stop a rebellion of farmers, right? That's the takeaway here. It highlights the problems with the Articles of Confederation. So the founding fathers started to realize, because of Shays' Rebellion and many other events, that we needed a stronger central government. So they get together at the Constitutional Convention, and by 1788, they ratified the United States Constitution. And they sought to fix the issues within the Articles of Confederation, again, too weak of a central government, okay? They created 3 branches of government that we still have today: the executive, or the president, the legislative branch, or Congress, and the judicial branch, which is also known as the courts. Now, it's important to realize that this was somewhat of a controversial move and created a pretty wide divide. You had those who did not want to ratify the Constitution and those who felt very strongly about ratifying the Constitution. They became known as the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. The Federalists were individuals who wanted a stronger central government, therefore ratifying the Constitution. The Anti-Federalists were those who did not want a stronger central government, who wanted stronger state governments, therefore did not feel comfortable ratifying a constitution which created a stronger central government. Now, too far. Eventually, the Federalists win out, and of course, we have the Constitution today. But the battle of federalism still goes on. We'll talk more about that in our next lecture. That wraps up this small lecture section. We will have one more for this chapter.